Talk about the recovery, but first, this is a big day for you because you're introducing a bill in Congress to help address some of the concerns about policing efforts that come in the tragic killing of George Floyd. Tell us about that bill, what it does, and why it's the necessary and appropriate reaction.
So we're going to have the Tim Scott bill be voted on tomorrow in terms of the first step of process. I'm a sponsor on that, and I'm going to vote to move that ahead. I believe, though, for Republicans and Democrats in this moment that's in front of us, we've got to do maybe something more than the lower hanging fruit that we both agree to. And that comes to this discussion of qualified immunity. And for business owners, people that come from Main Street like myself, accountability and transparency are a way of life. So I think for law enforcement, they're grappling with something that has stigmatized their business, all the good things they do because of these horrific incidents that occur far too often. So this bill addresses a law that's been in place since 1871 that had nothing touching it until the 60s when they started to judicially qualify immunity, and to where in the 80s it's gotten to the point where you can hardly redress or take to task these incidents that we all know need to be addressed. So this sets some clarification about when you have something that comes to the standard of a George Floyd, a Rayshard Brooks, Breonna Taylor, you've got to have some ability to hold people accountable. It also adds officially the organizations themselves into having that accountability. So far, anybody like me, this is easy because in most places you're fully accountable. You deal with full transparency. And David, I also make it analogous to health care. In the year and a half I've been here, I've been probably the most vocal Republican about the industry reforming itself. Be transparent, embrace competition, don't have barriers to entry. And that's been a tough struggle too, but I'll keep talking about it because I know it's right.
So, Senator, it may be easy, but the White House doesn't necessarily agree with you. A lot of your fellow Republicans don't necessarily agree with you, because what you would do is you take a very broad immunity created by the Supreme Court and cut back so it would be easier to sue policemen. Are you at all concerned that policemen might be reluctant to do their jobs because they're afraid they might get a lawsuit?
That's a good question, and I'm not wanting to get rid of qualified immunity. I'm wanting to reform it. And Republicans have been about not touching it at all, and Democrats getting rid of it. And really all I'm doing is, I think, putting a template out there that will prevent the frivolous lawsuits, because it's too hard a job already to be hampered with that, but it will allow accountability on these egregious situations. And I think if we don't have something that's a smart balance between eliminating frivolous lawsuits but having accountability on the significant stuff, we're kicking it down the road and we won't really solve the problem. And maybe the president would be okay with something like that, and maybe Republicans would come around, and you might get Democrats coming this direction. Otherwise, it's like many things here. It takes a long time to reach resolution. I just think this is a moment in time where you do something.
So, Senator, let's turn to the question of the recovery, because we're all hoping for it. We're hoping it's going to come. At the same time, it seems a bit fragile right now. We get various news, including today we heard 31 states have a positive, that's over 1 R naught score, which means the disease is spreading. How concerned should we be? How concerned is the business community that, in fact, this coronavirus is going to have us either shut down or slow down again?
Well, if we do a shutdown again, someone needs to have their heads examined, because all along, that was only necessary in a few places where it just cascaded out of control. Shutting down early, opening up late, and a one-size-fits-all approach that many places took, that's going to make their recoveries harder. A couple things make me optimistic about how we're going to recover. Number one, we had the strongest economy that I had ever been a part of, and that was running my own enterprise for 37 years. We were in excellent shape going into it. Credit that to the job and tax cut bill of 2017, President Trump leading on it. If we go back to some of the policies and regulations that were in place before that, there'll be a tough recovery. But if we just take everything we've learned about the disease, we know a lot more about it now. It's got peculiarities, and entrepreneurs and business owners are good at multitasking. They shut down the entire downtown in my hometown. My wife's had a business, it'll be 42 years this September. They would have been the ones most capable of distancing, wearing masks. And they have, like all business owners, great concern to keep their customers and their employees healthy. Going forward, I think you'll see, and we'll have the data, that the places that didn't take that overly prescriptive approach, where they were doing two things at once, are going to have good recoveries, and I think that's going to benefit the country in its entirety. The places that locked down too long, like a Kentucky or a Michigan, where they maybe didn't need to treat Detroit and the rest of the state the same way, or Louisville and Lexington, the rest of the state of Kentucky. Indiana had a pretty good balance, and I think we're going to recover accordingly.
Senator, how much more help do we need from the Congress? It looks like you're going to have a pretty busy July, because a lot of people are talking about a couple of cliffs that may be coming up in the middle and the end of the month, particularly unemployment insurance and some other assistance to the economy. What are you in favor of Congress doing at this point, if anything, before you go on August recess?
Yeah, I think Leader McConnell's got that right. We need to see how 1, 2, 3, and 3.5 have been working. We're not using all of the PPP due to the fact that it's now got some guidance on it that is keeping it from going to larger small businesses and trying to get to the places that need it the most. And if this recovery does what I think it's going to do, and I think President Trump has set the stage for that, and certain governors that were a little more, willing to take some risk, maybe we won't need it. And that doesn't mention the fact that we've spent $2.8 trillion and we're running $1 trillion structural deficits. So I think we got to be very careful about what we do going forward. And I think that rather than maybe adding flexibility, finding what we might have missed on the first go-around, I'm hoping that it doesn't take anything significant out of D.C. We've borrowed every penny that we put towards it. I was okay with it back then because of the uncertainty. Now let's emphasize on smartly reopening the economy, and hopefully that'll do the heavy lifting.
Okay, thank you so much, Senator. It's always great to have you with us. That is Senator Mike Braun of the state of Indiana. Coming up here, we're going to be talking with Jaron Smith. He is the president's assistant for domestic policy. We're going to talk to him about how to get the economy going, particularly when it comes to the less fortunate. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.